Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and entrepreneurs with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing, while also documenting their own personal investing journeys, are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode for you. Today we had the pleasure of interviewing Shawn Dimartile. He is the host of the Real Estate Takeoff podcast. He is obviously a real estate investor, entrepreneur. He's a former air traffic controller turned real estate investor. He started kind of a similar story to Corey and I. He started his podcast and real estate adventure about 4 years ago, and he scaled up pretty quickly. His first deal was a 32 unit out in Indiana, and now he's in the multifamily syndication space. Yeah. Shawn you mentioned he was an air traffic controller. Not only was he an air traffic controller, but he liquidated his 401k to get into real estate. And I think that's a cool takeaway from this, because he's so much further along now in his investing journey. We're not suggesting that everyone just goes and does that, but he's so much further along now in his life and his wealth building journey because he made that decision. And he talks about it in the episode. It was only not only, but it was $75,000, right? For some people that maybe you have a lot more of that in your 401k. The point is he took a risk, he liquidated his 401k, and then he tripled his 75k number in 2 years. So he turned that 75k in 240, 250, and then he was able to take that, and they went into raising capital and bigger deals. So this exponentiation, and we've talked about that in previous episodes in one of the deals that we're working on now, Shawn was able to do that and just find new ways to create wealth and not just staying in his W-2 job. Yeah, he has a really cool story.
He's just like us too.
That really is. Well, and I think it's you'll hear throughout the story, but he really did what you read about in books. He partnered up with his buddies that he worked with. They learned they each took their own lane. He became the underwriter. The other guy was the asset manager. The other guy helped manage construction. There's a lot of different things, but they just basically decided to take the plunge. The biggest thing was liquidating the 401k, and they took a risk. It was during COVID, and he put in some stipulations there. So
things have to go right too, though, Ryan. The risk, someone took a risk on him and took a chance. This guy at $100 million net worth became their mentor. So, but the reason is that other people can do this. You have to show the fire. He showed this guy that he was really all about it, and he was putting his money where his mouth is. And that by latching on and learning from somebody that really wanted to mentor him, he didn't go out and say, hey, can you be my mentor? It was a natural progression of this person liking them. He came on his podcast. That's advocating for starting a social media platform and talking about your journey. And Shawn is proof.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what I meant was he basically started building his team with friends and family within the air traffic control to take the 32 unit, but to scale up, you're exactly right. He had to find a mentor. He talked about that. He was like, dude, I hit a point where we needed to find a coach, a mentor, someone to help me get to the next level and take down bigger deals, because he got the fire. And he, funny enough, had someone on his show, really took to like him, liked his team, liked what he's doing. The guy, he said he paid him less than $100,000 to mentor him. And the guy found the deal for him, helped show the underwriting process, even invested $1 million in both of the first 2 deals they did on the syndication side. So it's really cool. It showed that networking is king once again. And it's putting a team together and using your resources can take you a lot further than you think, and can actually be a lot more lucrative than just stashing money in your 401k until you're 65.
Exactly.
So with all that, I think we welcome in Shawn and have him take away the show. When you have investment properties and tenants, you need a good system in place for collecting rent to make it easy as possible. And RentRedi can help you with everything. When you sign up for RentRedi, you can start adding your properties, inviting tenants, and creating charges. You can even set up automatic rent reminders and create auto late fees as well. For tenants, they can pay via ACH, card, or even cash using RentRedi's web and mobile apps. They can also use an automatic payment setup and sign up for rent reporting so they get rewarded for paying rent on time. RentRedi saves you time and hassle by automating rent collection, and you can manage everything from one dashboard. For our Weekly Juice listeners, RentRedi's given us a special 50% off for any RentRedi plan using our code WeeklyJuice at rentredi.com. That's RentRedi.com using the code WeeklyJuice. That's WeeklyJuice to save 50% off any rent-ready plan. Shawn, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show, man. As I mentioned, we've done some research on you, been following your story for a while, and we're excited to kind of share the layers of your story and who you are with our audience. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys, and giving me the opportunity, and I'm ready to provide as much value as I can to your listeners, man.
Cool. Let's do it. So take us back maybe pre-real estate, what you were doing, and then kind of how the light bulb went off in your head. Where you're like, whoa, real estate is something that I really want to, weave into my future.
So before real estate, I was an air traffic controller. I was working full-time here in San Diego as an air traffic controller, was making good money, thought I had my dream job and everything. And, since I had excess cash, I knew I wanted to invest. Long story short, a buddy of mine years ago was like, dude, you should check out this podcast called the Bigger Pockets podcast, which we've all heard of obviously by now. And I put it off for a while. And then I was on a road trip to Yosemite and threw that on and just got hooked, plain and simple. I was hearing all of these stories of, PE teachers and single moms that were crushing it and building these big portfolios. And that just made me think, if they can do it, I should be able to do this. I'm a single guy that doesn't have all that extra stuff going on. So really that was the catalyst. From there, I got obsessed, read every book I could get my hands on. Listened to every podcast I could, and started going to real estate meetups. And then, flash forward, and me and two guys that were also air traffic controllers started our own podcast. And then, the very first real estate deal we did, we all liquidated our 401ks and bought a 32 unit in Indianapolis. But really, the start came from just simply hearing that podcast and hearing what everyday normal people like me were able to achieve.
I want to talk about this liquidating your 401k concept and going in on the 32 unit. Most people, when they get into real estate investing, they're like, you know what? I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. I want to go test the waters of the duplex, a quadplex, especially if you've never done it before. The research helps, but what was it like for you to liquidate your 401k? The financial society out there says that's a big no-no, right? And for us, it's like, I wish I had more money in my 401k because I would liquidate it if I did. But I'm curious, what was the mindset like and your ability and the fortitude to be able to do that?
So for me, I was a big believer in 401ks. I was maxing my 401k out for 6 years straight before I liquidated it. So I had bought into that, but really what started to change my mind was I'm working as an air traffic controller. I'm working 6-day work weeks most of the time because they can give you mandatory overtime and there's this huge shortage. So I was just working my butt off. Usually my only days off were Tuesdays. And I started to question dude, do I really want to do this until retirement age? Do I really want to grind this hard? It was good money. I was making over $200,000 a year, which, it seemed like $1 million to me. And, I thought about that, but then I also started learning obviously about real estate and then kind of comparing the differences. Now, with a 401k, we all know you're investing in index funds. We've heard of the 4% rule, things like that. If you live off of 4% of your nest egg after retirement, then you're really likely to not run out of money before you die, all that. But, I started to contrast that with real estate when I was learning about cash flow and all the benefits. And there really are polar opposites because with your 401k, when you retire, you start selling off shares of those index funds and bonds, whatever it's allocated to, in order to fund your retirement. So that nest egg is getting smaller over time. So you're just trying to withdraw at a rate to where you don't run out of money. Now, if you retire and you have a real estate portfolio, you're actually getting richer over time as opposed to poor because your cash flow will only increase over time as rents increase and inflation, et cetera. Values of your property are increasing over time. You can pass that on to other people. There was a million benefits that I saw, but I think probably the most important of all of these was that I could retire early, much easier with real estate. I saw it done over and over again with people I met, people on podcasts, et cetera. And so that's when I realized, okay, I could retire earlier than this and potentially have more security, more money if I really went all in on this. So liquidating the 401k for me, obviously that's not going to make sense to everybody. I didn't have a family with kids and just everything made more sense for me to be able to liquidate it. I had, it was less of a risk for me, but For me, it was just, if I'm going to do this, if I really want to expedite my ability to quit this job, I've got to go all in. So I went all in, liquidated it all, and put everything into that first deal.
So let me ask you this, because there's a couple ways. I've looked at this before. I've been doing the max just like you, and it's stacking up pretty good. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can take a loan out against it, I believe, right? And then you have to pay. You can take X amount off of the bulk that you have in there. I think it was like up to maybe like 50 grand or something. There's basically some restrictions on it, but liquidating it, did that mean basically you just said, hey, listen, I want all my cash now, and you paid, I think there's like a 10% withdrawal fee plus taxes? Like, how'd that all work?
Well, I just so happened to time it right as well, as I did with a lot of my real estate investments, to be truthful, over the last 4 years. But it was during COVID. They removed the 10% penalty if you withdrawed your 401k, and they let you pay the taxes spread out over 3 years instead of the year after you withdraw. So yeah, I didn't have to pay that 10%. And then, dividing out the taxes over 3 years made it like really easy. So it made a lot more sense during that time frame for me to do it. I was able to avoid that, and I just got lucky on timing, because that just so happened to be the time I was looking for real estate deals.
That's amazing, dude. Some things in life really are truly all about timing and in the right cycle, right? So
totally.
Let's talk about this deal you did in Indiana. I mean, I think it's insane to go from one day air traffic control making 200 grand a year to next day liquidating your 401k and going all in with 2 of your buddies and real estate, just not hoping that it works. Obviously, I'm sure you ran your numbers, but walk us through the entire project, like how you guys found it, who was running the numbers, and like how you divided and conquered and took this thing down, because there's a lot of people out there that might be sitting back who you were 4 years ago with a bunch of cash and just saying, hey, like maybe I can liquidate.
Totally. And I think if you are one of those new people that are thinking about like trying to pick your market, what kind of asset class you want to do, how are you going to reach it, get started, all this, we started looking from like a really 30,000 foot view or even space view of the United States. And, here in San Diego, it's obviously insane expensive to buy real estate. So there was just a huge barrier to entry. So we knew that we couldn't afford and didn't want to do Southern California for our first investment. So we started looking in cheaper markets for one. So that shifted us towards the Midwest and the South mostly. And then from there, once we had that swath of the map, we kind of honed in on a couple of cities that had low real estate prices, but they still had like a lot of upside. They still had, industry that was growing, job growth, good economic fundamentals. And we ended up, landing on a couple of different cities, like Indianapolis, Louisville, Kentucky, a couple of these cities just like that around the Midwest and South. From there, we started communicating with brokers, Marcus and Millichat brokers, all that kind of stuff, and telling them our story, trying to get some deal flow sent to us. We found this deal from a Marcus and Millichat broker, and it was in a market. So this is Greenwood, Indiana, which is about 15 minutes south of Indianapolis. And it had amazing fundamentals, the market. I mean, the median household income at the time, I think was like $65,000, which for that part of the country is really good. The schools were rated, 10 out of 10 for the high school and like a 9 out of 10 for the other ones. Very low crime rates, was growing population, good jobs. All the fundamentals were there. I was actually the underwriter, so I ran the numbers. The rents were way under market. It was a mom and pop owner that had owned it for forever. They owned it free and clear, and they had basically done no value add to it. I mean, the rents for the one bedrooms, I think, were $400, $440 something when we took over, and some of the 2 bedrooms were at like $500 and $600. So there was a clear value add play to go in, fix it up, and be able to raise rents. The comps were all like hundreds of dollars more in rent. So everything just made sense. So the plan, we ended up getting this under contract. The plan was to go in, renovate all the interior units. We had some exterior renovations as well. There was an old, what used to be apparently a leasing office, which is weird for a 32 unit, but it was built in 1968. So maybe things were different back then. But it was like just dilapidated in the middle of the parking lot. And we were going to convert that into an extra unit. So going through that deal, everything was going pretty well from the get-go. We started cash flowing really early on. Renovations were going well. And then some things started to go wrong. So just real quick, we had like, it seemed like an air conditioner went out every month, 1 or 2 during the summer, just died. We had clay piping that was like a drainage pipe underneath the parking lot that was collapsed, clogged, and backing up toilets. There was some cast iron pipes that were like all corroded, and like, you know, there was like this much room for water to go through. So there were some big issues that came up that I've learned from, and we had to borrow money to like finish those renovations because these were just huge unexpected hits. But a little over 2 years later, we did end up selling it. We sold it and tripled our profit, tripled our money, our investment, and ended up getting out and doing really well. So it ended up really being a home run, but it was a heavy value add 1968 property with a lot of learning lessons.
Shawn, the cool thing about this is basically you're explaining the price you pay to be able to win so big like that. That's 100% what it is. You have to go through all of the stuff that when you're in the middle of it, it feels like the heaviest thing in the world. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Like we had a property burned down, right? And I'm like thinking in the middle of this, I'm like, this is what people do. Like this is what real estate investors have to deal with. Like it's just shit that happens. And you think the reason why you're able to win is because there's not that many people that are willing to go through that stuff. So the fact that you're able to sell that for what, 3 years later for triple the profit.
It was just a little over 2 years later, actually, which it makes it even crazier. But you're right. Like, here's the thing about real estate deals, especially those big ones. Like, you'll have a plan, but just like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And you will get punched in the face in real estate. Every single deal I've ever had, had something unexpected go wrong. And the winners are the people that can solve problems and come with creative solutions and just get it done. And at the end of the day, there was a lot of that. I mean, dude, it was crazy, like how many things went wrong. We'd have to switch around the plan and things like that. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to allocate your capital to the right things, don't run out of money, and implement a value add plan so that you can sell it for more.
So let's talk about the plan to sell it. I assume, bring us back a little bit to the beginning here. And I don't know if you're comfortable sharing numbers, but I'm so curious on like, I know you guys liquidated the 401k. You can give me a roundabout here, but like, how much did you guys each go into this deal with? What'd you buy it for? And then if you don't mind, maybe what you sold it for? Because I'm kind of trying to get to the next thing when you get this bucket load of dough. How does it unfold the rest of your story?
So my invested capital was only $78,000. And I know some people are probably listening to that going, didn't you liquidate your 401k? Yeah, it wasn't that much. So that was all it was. The other guys, there was actually 5 of us total in on the deal. So it was me and my 2 business partners. And then we actually brought in one more guy that we worked with, and then 2 other guys we met at our real estate meetup. Collectively, I think we had $450,000, $500,000 total capital invested. Bought it for $1.2 million. Threw every penny of that into the deal, basically. And then we eventually were actually able to do a cash out refinance on the property, but then like less than a year later, we sold it for 3.15. So
you turned your 78 into basically 230, something like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So it ended up, we ended up doing like really, really well on it.
Thanks for leading me here. I just wanted to know, I'm so curious. I know listeners are probably like, all right, dude, like how much did you actually have in the 401k? What you bought it for? What you sold it for? Now I'm thinking about, okay, Shawn's got his $230,000, right? And we know how far advanced you are now. What'd you guys do next? Is there like a boutique hotel mixed into the play here down the line? There's a couple things that I may know on the back end, but lead us there.
We did a bunch of stuff, dude. So like while we were in the middle of that plan, we were on the hunt for a mentor. And this is an important part of the story because that's really what like skyrocketed our trajectory. But we had interviewed this guy on our podcast, John Azar, and we were telling him like, yeah, man, like we're looking for a mentor. We've been shopping all these different courses, and it just seems like they're all like, you know, schools with modules with very little one-on-one time with the mentor. And he and his brother had owned over 8,000 apartment units and been in the industry for over 20 years, and they didn't have any mentees. And like he was like, well, dude, like, you know, after the podcast we're just shooting the shit, and he says, I'm gonna go talk to Tony, and you know, maybe we'd be willing to mentor you guys. I really like you guys. I like what you're doing, and you know, maybe we could work something out. Long story short, they said yes. So another value from the podcast. And then very shortly after that, we did 2 back-to-back syndications. One was 150 unit, one was 145 unit, both in North Carolina. And we closed on those 2 months apart. And we just like we really weren't for sure that we'd be able to raise all those millions of dollars. I think the first one we raised like $3 million, and then my mentor made up the difference with his own money. He invested like over $1 million, and then basically the same thing on the second deal. So both of those we closed on before we sold the 32 unit. So like there was kind of like this rapid rise, and most of that money was raised from coworkers and friends and family. And then after that, is when we got the boutique hotel. We got that about a year and 2 months ago.
I want to talk about the transition then, the transition between you taking down there's one thing to take down a deal with 5 people, right? And you know, you're all in it together, you're in the war room, you're like, if we go down, we go down together, like, right? But raising private capital or money from other people, they're not seeing all the stuff that's going on. And that's probably for a good reason, right? Because if they did, they probably wouldn't invest, right? Because they're looking at,
might be freaked out.
This pipe here and this air conditioning here, you get paid to do that. So what was the transition like from you putting your own money and the small partnership that you formed to raising capital with going in with, $3 million?
So really the transition was, there was a lot of learning lessons. I had never raised capital before, and that was like really, that gets you outside of your comfort zone pretty quick. People always ask me, make comments like, "Oh, dude, I heard air traffic control is super stressful." I thought that raising capital was way more stressful, and doing those deals was personally. But we really heavily leveraged our mentor, and that was big part of the reason that we got a mentor. Like, this mentor was awesome because he was teaching us, but he also sourced the deal for us. He invested over $1 million of his own money into the deal. His property management company was going to manage it. And so taking all of this to investors, like, it made it so much easier to raise capital. Plus, these investors were hearing us every single day at work talk about our 32 unit, how much money we're making, the cash flow, things like that. So, the transition was just made so much easier because we had a mentor. I couldn't even imagine like what that process would have been like without one, if we were just like, all right, let's go try and raise all this money now on our own. So, the transition really started to switch into a lot more learning how to raise capital, learning how to educate and nurture these investors and things like that. But outside of that, like, it just got so much easier because of the mentorship. That's all I could really say about that. But so, a lot of learning lessons.
So with that, and let's talk about mentorship a little bit. I know it's super important, right? In order to scale, you reach a point where you're looking at your partners. You're like, all right, like we're kind of doing the same thing over and over. We're sourcing, looking for deals, you need to get out of your comfort zone again, but it happens fast. It's really strange. And you're just like, there's so many moving pieces. You think about hiring out and trying to get some tasks off your hand. Maybe you guys are still trying to, or like for us, example, we still have our W-2 jobs. So there's a lot going on. And we realized like, hey, we talked pre-show on this, but it's like, hey, we're at the point where we probably need a coach. We probably need a mentor. And we've done some partnerships with other people, and they're kind of acting like our mentors, right? Where we're leveraging their systems, they're leveraging ours. We're kind of building this thing together. But it comes to a point where the hand holding is necessary, and it really helps you get to the next level. So can you just maybe give a little bit more info on the partnership that you formed with these gentlemen? Like, did you have to pay for it? And, or was it just, hey, like, you're showing value? What value did you show? Because we always preach on our show, right? If you provide value, people will come. A lot of people are like, well, what can I even provide? For us, it's the leverage of the podcast. Is we have an audience. We have a platform. You can share your story and network with other people. And there's a lot of other things there. Marketing. You need help with your social. A lot of different things. So I know that's probably a lot, but let's talk about a little bit of what you guys did for your mentorship and if it was paid or not.
What's going to be funny about this conversation is there wasn't really a lot of value we could provide to our mentors. My mentor, his net worth is about $100 million. He has a private jet, a yacht. We did pay him some money, and he told me that the money was he just wanted to make sure we were serious. I promise there's no way that money made a dent in his wallet at all. He's got plenty. This guy, they're in their 60s. I believe that the reason why they did it is because they kind of like wanted to give back. They wanted to help some guys that were coming up. They've already done really well for themselves. My mentor lives on a golf course. He has 5 daughters, and he bought every single one of them a mansion on the golf course next to him.
I like
this
that guy.
Dude's already made it. So we didn't really have a lot of value to provide him. He didn't need our capital. He didn't need to bring us that deal. He didn't need to split the GP with us. I really think he's just like truthfully wanted to kind of give back and wanted to help some guys that needed some help to learn the business. Outside of that, he provided a ton of value to us because, like, you know, us, like, I'd never raised money before. How does this work legally? How do we actually, like, distribute the money to investors? Do we just wire this to them? What kind of software are you supposed to use? Can you show me how to use the software? All of these little things that have less to do with the real estate itself, like, we needed to be taught. There's so much value that we got out of all of that from having him hold our hands. That's why I always say, like, yeah, I couldn't have imagined doing that, like, trying to figure that out.
This is even more of a reason for you to put your story out there. And not everyone should start a podcast. I'm not suggesting that, but to talk about what you're doing to everyone that you know, because you really just never know who's going to latch on or who's going to want to see you succeed. And we've met more people in the real estate game that want to see the people that are coming up succeed than any business that I've ever seen. And I haven't seen that many.
I agree.
I'm only 31, but for some reason, I don't know the exact reason why, but people are like, yep, I know what you're going through. I've been there before. I did this, I made this mistake, and I want to see, and we're already seeing it at a small level. Like, people hit us up, we're going to be starting a coaching program. I don't know when. That's something that's going to come down the pike, but, like, there's so many levels to the game that there's always someone that's behind you. And if you can provide value to them, that person is always going to be thinking about you, regardless of if they can't provide value now. Shawn, I bet in the next 15 years, you're probably going to be figuring out some way that you could provide value to your mentor. And that could be as simple as, like, you know, helping him build a website if he's 60 and doesn't know how to do it, right? Just as an example, I'm trying to think of it.
I think the value, it's actually funny, you kind of said it without saying, is like the guy's going back in time and remembering who he was when he was going through the journey. And truly, like, there's something about the excitement again. He's back in the deals. He's back in the war room. Like, there's something that's juicing him up going to do it. He just bought the mansion. He's got the crib. He's probably waking up every day. He's like, what am I doing? This is awesome, right? Like, I'm living my family life, but I miss the hunt. I miss the game. And if you can impact your lives, like, what's better than that?
Two things. One, I think that the reason why so many people, like, in the real estate industry seem to be so helpful and stuff is because everyone's entrepreneurs, and all of these entrepreneurs kind of have gone through that entrepreneur struggle of trying to get your business started and grow it. I just think that people that have been through that are more willing to help because they know the struggle and it's just, for whatever reason, they want to get back and make it easier for you. The second thing is like you mentioned about the podcast, what I always used to think is, okay, everyone knows me as air traffic controller Shawn. Obviously, my friends, family, and obviously my coworkers, like, I'm air traffic controller Shawn. How the hell are they going to know me as real estate Shawn if I'm not just talking about it all the time and I don't have some kind of a way for them to realize that I do know my shit? And podcasting, all these platforms, social media, whatever you do, that is why you do it, because otherwise they're never going to hear from you and feel confident that you actually know what you're talking about. But yeah, like, you know, my mentor, he's never told me that explicitly, but yes, like, there's no denying that it ain't like, we spent less than six figures for them to be our mentors. He didn't need that money, and he's doing just fine. So I think that guys like that, yeah, they see other people coming up, and he gets excited about it. Like, I remember when we were selling our deal, we kept getting asked, they wanted us to justify the pricing, a lot of the sellers. And I remember him getting all animated, being like, no, tell them to go after themselves. Like, you want to sell it for 3.1 million. And that's, if they don't want to buy it, then tell them that, or if they don't want to pay that, tell them you're not going to sell it then. You're selling it for 3.1 million because you want $3.1 million. Don't get into back and forth with them because it'll only hurt you. And he was right. Like, that's exactly what happened.
It's really cool.
Sold it for 3.1.
It's amazing. Yeah, damn right you did. So last thing on this I'll ask you is, because it's interesting this day and age. There's a lot of different types of people in the world. Like, we think we're pretty good at vetting people, at least in moral character and value, but you never know. There's a lot of people that are good at marketing themselves out there, right? They're just not quite the people you thought they were. So I want to talk about this, and as you guys are navigating this through, like, our timelines are similar, right? We talked about this maybe roughly 4 years ago with the podcast. We're scaling up in different ways, but how are you guys, you and your partners, or you specifically, vetting out people that want to partner with you? What's your process look like? What questions are you asking? And I know, maybe it's not a ton of different partnerships that you've done. Maybe it's just this mentor, but you have gone through the process of linking up with other people. How do you feel people out? And is it just a leap of faith, or do you have a process you go through?
That's a good point. I don't have a process, and I mean, like, a written down process per se. But my process has definitely changed over time as far as, like, what I look for and things. For me personally, I think one of the most important things is the risk profiles of the partners. because we all talk about like, oh, you want to find somebody that complements your skills and, you know, somebody, all that stuff. Like, obviously that doesn't need to be restated. But what I want to add for the listeners is I like to look at how they run the numbers on their deals, because I'm a numbers guy and I do the underwriting anyways. But I want to know, like, you know, what's your exit cap assumptions that you like to bake into your deals? How conservative are you on that? You know, how much contingency capital do you have? Like, how do you move around the money? I want to know more of what they're actually going to do with the money, with the debt, things like that on the deal, because those are like the riskiest things to me. And I just want to make sure that I'm not going to get into a deal with somebody and then all of a sudden they have like some crazy ideas that I don't agree with. So I say that knowing, though, and all you listeners listen to me right now, that is easier said than done, because no matter what, you won't know everything about a partner. But you don't want to get into a deal with somebody and they want to do some like really risky stuff that you didn't want to do, or you know, they're all of a sudden are like, oh, well, I think we should do these renovations, and you're like, that doesn't really increase our NOI though. I don't know if I agree with that. So I would just, you know, nowadays I like to warm up to people and like become friends with them, hear about their deals, what they're doing, how they did it, and spend more time kind of dating them before I marry them in a deal, I guess, is as simple as I could put it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think it's well put with the dating before you marry. It's just, I think with the platforms, right? You notice a lot of people, a lot of people cycle through, and there's a lot of people that'll be like, hey, I want to do a deal with you. You want to do something? And you're like, okay.
Yeah, all the time.
Let's table this and let's meet a couple times. Let's meet in person, right? Like at least 5 to 10 Zooms. You can't really put a process together, but we like to meet people first and really go through, and it's a morals and values things to start, right? But then you got to get down to the numbers and nitty gritty. But I will say at some point you do take like a mini leap of faith. You're not going to know for sure exactly how a deal is going to shake out. It's investing, right? You know, there's risk. And I think you said it perfectly. It was like measuring the risk profile of these people, how well you think you know them. And I don't know, real estate's forgiving in ways, but I think there's cycles to this game, and we've seen 2008, right? Ups, downs. You don't want to lose your shirt. So I think it's important to really go through the process and try to vet people. But at some point you do need to take the next step and take action, or else you're just going to be in the same spot you were. And I think that's very hard for everyone, you know? Like,
exactly. It's just like doing due diligence in real estate. Like, I can do the most thorough due diligence possible on a property, but once you start pulling back drywall and things like that, things could come up that you didn't expect. And it's the same thing with getting partners. Like, you could do a bunch of due diligence to mitigate your risk with that person, but until you actually jump in, like, you won't know for sure.
Totally.
Absolutely. So Shawn, what happened next then? So maybe like catch us up to where you are now. I know that you mentioned that you started to scale from there. You started to raise capital. You raised $3 million. What projects did that lead you into? And like, where are you today with your portfolio? What's that look like?
So after the 2 big syndications I told you about, I kind of doubled down on some more Airbnbs, and that's largely just because I wanted to quit my job. And, you know, when you're syndicating multifamily properties, you'll get an acquisition fee, obviously, and you split that between you and the GPs. It's not like it's going to be life-changing money. There might be an asset management fee that's just enough to pay for like your CoStar subscriptions and stuff. But you're not like getting enough to support your lifestyle until like usually you exit and sell deals, things like that. So I needed more cash flow. So I got a couple like nice Airbnbs to give me monthly income so I can actually quit. So I focused on that for a little while. Then they were changing all of these Airbnb laws around the country, and we were loving all the cash flow we were getting. So we were like, dude, like, what about these, like getting a hotel or like getting a boutique hotel in a city like San Diego that's, you know, super strict on Airbnbs. And so we ended up getting a boutique hotel in Northern California on the coast, which I just exited that deal Monday. And actually Rich, my old partner, him and his firm bought that deal off of us to take themselves. And then now we have shifted our focus to what's called the bonus ADU program in San Diego. So we could talk about that a little bit if you guys want to unpack that, but essentially just adding accessory dwelling units to some properties here in San Diego.
Yeah, talk to us about that, because we've interviewed one person and we got the high level of what they are, but it sounds like to me like in order to help provide more housing, just correct me if I'm wrong, provide more housing in a city like San Diego, which is one of the highest, most expensive places in the United States, that you have an ability as a homeowner or an investor to build accessory dwelling units, which is what the acronym ADU is, an extra like 1 bed or 2 bed on the property. Now, is that the reason that these are so popular? Is it because the townships and the cities are like basically telling people to do this to create more housing? Or like, how did you go about it?
So yeah, let me start by providing a little bit of context for the program, and then I'll tell you what makes the San Diego program so unique and why we're focusing on it. So the important thing to know first of all is that San Diego's been growing for a while now. It's the most competitive rental market in California. On average, 17 renters are competing for the same apartment. Housing supply is extremely low. The median home price is just shy of $1 million for the median home price. And this is due to the fact that all of the buildable land has been taken in San Diego. And that's because San Diego is geographically constrained. You got the ocean to the west, Mexico to the south, mountainous terrain to the east, and Camp Pendleton military base to the north. So it's literally boxed in. And so California in general has, really been a big state to adopt accessory dwelling units. And all these are literally apartment units that you can put onto an existing single family home lot. And they do this to increase density, and you don't have to go through all the hoops that a ground up developer has to go through. Faster permitting, all that. So San Diego took that ADU policy and they expounded upon that, and they called it the bonus ADU program. So essentially, you can take a single family or a multifamily lot that's located in what they call transit priority areas, which is a half a mile from any major public transportation stop. And you can add unlimited ADUs up to the floor area ratio, the FAR, of that lot. Now, without getting into the math of how that works, essentially what this means is you can take a single family lot or a multifamily lot and turn it into 10, 20, I've even seen 30 unit apartment complexes. And there's a couple benefits to this. Number one, you're able to put brand new apartment units in some of the most coveted communities here in San Diego. And this, by the way, the bonus program is unique to San Diego. No other city has this. And so, take, for example, one of our projects, which is a half a mile from the beach. It was a single family home on a 7,000 square foot lot, and it's going to be a 10-room apartment or 10-unit apartment complex. The house is it's a corner lot. The house is on the front corner, and a 3-story structure is in the back that's all apartment units. And so otherwise, there's no other new apartment units in that beach community. There's no vacant land. The second thing that's really awesome about this is that with traditional development, you're going to buy an empty piece of land, spend all this money for the land, and then you're going to spend a bunch of money to get your building designed. You're going to submit for permits, and while you're sitting there waiting for permits, you're still making payments on your debt. You're still spending money, what we call holding costs. So you're just burning through money without any income coming in. And with this strategy, we're able to rent out an existing house. And in the case of that project I mentioned earlier, we actually got an Airbnb permit, and we're making 10 grand a month. So we're actually producing income while we wait for permits. So there's other things we love about it too, but those are the two big ones. You're putting new product in these really awesome sought after communities, and your holding costs are basically eliminated.
Wow. So how does this process work where you're able to avoid the permitting process? Because I imagine that's a big reason why people stay out of the development. We've had to deal with permitting just on a small scale in small townships they want a permit for everything. We have 12 permits out. So
I want to correct you because, and I probably kind of worded it a little wrong, but you're not avoiding permitting altogether. We still have to get building permits, but you don't have to go through the same process as traditional development. So traditional development, you've got to get a parking study, multiple environmental studies, go through a lot more bureaucracy with the city and community planning boards and all these other things that can take 3-4 years. Whereas with this, they have an expedited process where not only are you you don't have to do the parking studies, environmental studies and things like that. And there's actually no parking requirements if you're in a transit priority area. Remember I said if it's within a half a mile from public transportation. So they they assume people are going to ride the crappy public transportation in San Diego, which they won't. But then you also avoid things like developer impact fees, all these fees that traditional developers have to pay to the city. So, in a way, you're still doing permitting, but it's a lot shorter time frame with less headache than doing traditional development. And they did all of that because they just obviously need housing so bad. They need it now. to provide a little more context, because I forgot to say some of the numbers. I already told you guys about San Diego being geographically constrained. They said in their 2021 annual report on housing, the city needs to build 108,000 new homes by 2029. And in order to do that, they need to triple the amount of housing permits that they've approved each year, all the way through 2029. And basically every analyst I've ever read says it's basically not even possible. They don't think that the city can achieve that. So the housing supply and demand imbalance is like so extreme. They only approved 5,033 new homes in 2021. For comparison, I think there was like double digit, like 30,000 units being built in Seattle during the same time frame. It's nuts.
Yeah, so I'm just curious on, like, do you think this is a forever thing? Or are you guys in a small window where you see, hey, we can capitalize on this? And I know California in general is just an insane market, and I think you guys are even dwindling it down to a specific niche. It's really cool, and there's a lot here, right? So I'll start you with that question, is like, do we think this thing is going to last for a long time, or do you have a pocket? And then I'm trying to conceptualize, maybe you can wind it back for me, but like, are you guys building up at this point if it's a lot? Like, I'm trying to think of, like, we had another gentleman on the show, he mentioned it to us, he's like, yeah, I have a small lot, I'm just building up. I'm like, dude, how are you even doing that constructurally on top of the house? You're knocking it down, starting the new foundation, going up with 30 units. So maybe take us through one of your projects at that point.
So our Ocean Beach project, that's going to be a 3-story structure behind the house. So the lot is kind of long and skinny, and it's a corner lot. So the construction can get in there very easily from the side and from the alley. One of our big things whenever we're looking for properties is alley access, because one, you can reduce your setback to the back of your lot so you can be closer to the fence. And it's also a lot cheaper to get construction equipment in there. Typically, we want to stay 3 stories or less. The reason why is because once you start getting into, like, if it's going to be 4 or 5 stories, now you have to put in an elevator. And if you're not going to be building that many units, like, your ROI on the elevator, it kind of kills your ROI, because, like, you're going up 1 or 2 extra floors for like 4 or 5 extra units. So yes, we're going up, but we want to keep it 3 stories or less because of the whole elevator issue, and it allows us to keep it all sticks, all wood, instead of having to bring in steel, which makes it way more expensive.
How long do you guys see this kind of working out in the area, right? Like, is it a forever thing, or you guys got a little?
No, it's not a forever thing. And I'll tell you why. Because one, there's only so many lots that make sense to be able to do this in San Diego. There's not that many big lots. The well will run dry. And that's actually why I called my ebook on this. I wrote an ebook on this strategy, and it's called California Gold. I call it the California Gold Rush, because you can make a ton of money with this. But I really think over the next couple of years is kind of like the window where most of the good lots are going to be already have been built on. And on top of that, like, it's getting more popular. So there's starting to be more competition in the marketplace for these lots. All of the agents and brokers realize if they're selling a big lot, that there's all this value that could be added. So they're like jacking up the prices. A good example is a property we found that looked like it was awesome, but a broker got a hold of it. The guy bought it for $800,000 3 years ago, and they're trying to sell it for $2 million because it's a 10,000 square foot lot. So like, it's getting harder to get those deals. I think that the well will slowly run dry, and we've got a couple of years of like being able to make some good money on this kind of a plan. But I don't see it lasting like, decades.
Sure. So thank you for that. So can you take us through maybe one of the deals you either have under contract, you've already taken down? Maybe talk to the purchase price, and then how much you guys are actually putting down for this. Is this like 25% type thing? You guys paying in cash? I know like some of your deals have come full cycle, so I'm always curious on people if you're using leverage debt or if you're gonna, pay out of pocket full cash.
That's a good question. So we did use debt, seller financing. So the Ocean Beach project is the one I've been talking about. That one we were able to lock up with seller financing, 80% LTV at 5.4% interest. So that's the first piece of debt. Once we've got our permits, which we're probably a year out from having the building permits, then we'll apply for construction debt. We're expecting around 60% LTV. All in, we're going to be a little over $3 million for a down payment, all of the loans, everything soft and hard cost. And this will end up being a 10-unit property that we expect to sell for north of $5 million, conservatively. So like, for example, the cap rate, bottomed out at around 2.98% in these beach communities over the past year. Our projections are a 4 cap. So, we baked in a lot of conservative assumptions there, but, even if we saw it like a 3.5 cap, I mean, we'll blow those numbers out of the water. So it's, that's kind of the basics of it. The building itself is probably going to cost us a little over $1 million to build. These units, it sits a little bit up on a hill. So these units are going to have ocean views, like badass ocean views. You could watch the sun go down into the ocean, watch the sunset.
Wow.
They are smaller units. The 1-bedrooms are 465 square feet, and the 2 bedrooms are 700 square feet. So these aren't 750 square feet. So these aren't, huge units, but that's kind of the trend around here anyways, is getting these smaller and smaller units. But, you're half a mile from the beach. You got in-unit washer and dryer, air conditioning, floor-to-ceiling windows, ocean views. It's going to kill.
Very cool. So let me ask you this. You mentioned you're the numbers guy of your team, which I think is awesome. And I think you're probably, this is just how I feel, but it's usually the deal finder or the analyzer that I feel is like the most important person on the team. And you could argue everyone else, but this is really where the deal gets made or not, right? And like running the numbers and just even finding this thing. So can you talk us through some of the resources or how you personally learn how to run the numbers on these types of deals? It's much different. It's similar but different, right, to the traditional residential, the onesie twosies all the way up, right? But then when you get into the big dog game, it's a different type of analyzing. It takes a lot longer. And so I'm basically looking for some resources because we get asked this all the time. We're slowly scaling up to this level too. And I want to be able to point people into the right direction outside of maybe just hitting them with the YouTube. You know what I mean?
So let's do this. I'll tell you guys the exact underwriting model I use, and I'm going to give your listeners some awesome places they could go. Where I recommend you go, if you're listening to this, is the same place that my mentor got his underwriting model, at which he got a new one made by them. It's called Top Shelf Models. Top Shelf Models. Cool name, obviously. But they have all these underwriting models that you can get on their website, from ground up development, value add multifamily. You can even have them tailor it to your specific needs. They give you a 1-hour consultation. No, they're not paying me for this. I wish they would. But they also have like courses that you could take to show you kind of how to underwrite. My mentor taught me how to underwrite the way he does. That's where I got like my base level for multifamily underwriting. Then because this project is a little bit more unique, I needed to bring in some outside guys to kind of help me understand the uniqueness of development, right? So we brought in other GPs. Like we brought in my buddy James Heinzman, who is a commercial real estate project manager. So he literally manages the budget and labor for commercial real estate projects. The cool thing is he actually built my apartment building that I live in right now in Little Italy in San Diego. But he's done over $100 million in construction, really understands how the construction aspect works. So we were like, dude, give you 20% of the GP if you want to come in and fill this gap for us and make sure that we get this right. So we brought him in, and then we've got another guy that's done like dozens and dozens of these projects. He's our preferred contractor. He invests himself heavily, can raise capital. He kind of also helped with the construction aspect. Now, the rest of the underwriting, a couple of the tips that I like to use, as far as resources, CoStar obviously is a huge one. I think if you're going to be doing commercial sized deals, you've got to get CoStar to at least get, at the very least, it's going to give you a ton of data, the most robust data. But always remember, if you're listening to this, to double check everything that you find from these resources. Namely, I can pull rental comps on CoStar, but oftentimes the data on CoStar can lag by a couple of months, or it could be a little inaccurate. So if you're getting rental comps, use that to start. Always call the property manager to ask what those units rented for, because sometimes it's different. I would also rebuff what you're finding on CoStar with brokers. So if it's saying that properties are trading at a 3 cap, that also lags. Make sure you call brokers and say, hey man, this is what I'm showing. What are you guys seeing? Things like that. Some of the challenges I'll tell you that we've had though out here is we're building these brand new units and there's not very good comps nearby. So for example, Ocean Beach, the last time new apartments were built there was 10 years ago. So a lot of the 1-bedrooms that I was trying to comp, the interiors are from the 90s and they don't have any air conditioners. So we're super conservative. These guys are getting $2,500 a month. They don't have ocean views and all this other stuff, but the only comp I could find that's similar is not even at the beach and it's 5 miles away. So, you know, we're assuming our 1-bedrooms are also going to get $2,500 a month. That's a little bit higher on a cost per square foot basis, but there's some you're going to find challenges when you're underwriting sometimes in certain markets. Like if you're like in a niche like ours, where like you might not have the best comps, and not always an exact science, but, I hope that answers most of your questions. Are there any specific questions like you want to ask about the underwriting or anything?
No, I actually I really appreciate that. Those few resources are great. I just want people to be able to take basically, they're probably driving, right? And they're like, all right, man, this is great, but I want to dive in when I get home. And there's a lot of like very basic stuff out there. So those were great. Thanks for pointing that out. And I really like the model one that you shared. I'm going to go look at that too, because I think a lot of these things do need to be custom tailored. And the most important thing that I wanted to bring up here is like, it takes an army. It truly isn't one person that can do this thing. You gave I don't know how to say the right word, but you had foregone 20% of the GP, right? To bring an all-star in, right?
For Wentz.
Worth it, dude.
That's awesome.
I don't know, man.
No,
I'm making my own words up over here. But I'm saying like you basically gave up 20% to bring in a rock star to ensure the deal was a success, right? So I think that's important. You can't just have one person for each role on these deals. There's people that have done it more successfully before you. You need to bring them in, or at least talk to them, get mentorship. And I know it's daunting for people to feel like it's all on their shoulders. It's not. You have to bring people in.
I think that's why we love real estate so much, because it's almost like it's so relatable to sports. You mentioned an army, but it's so relatable to like building that team and almost being a GM and like, okay, we got to pay this guy because he's the quarterback and this dude's going to throw for 4,000 yards and he's going to have 38 touchdowns.
In one game.
Okay, yeah. Well, not one game. That season, right? But he's going to be this playmaker. We also need a middle linebacker because we have to play defense. Like we're going to need to know like how could we potentially lose money? Like, you know, we need a free safety. It just like there's so many cool elements of putting the puzzle pieces together. And you just mentioned a bunch of rock stars that you banded together to take this thing down.
Yeah.
And Shawn, you sound like you're awesome. And I'm sure a lot of people think you are, but like, you're not doing this thing yourself. Like you couldn't. Yeah. And that's probably the most exciting thing about taking down new ventures to me.
Yeah. And I want to piggyback off of that by telling everyone listening, like, I'm not any smarter than you guys. Like the blueprint here's what's awesome about real estate. There's a blueprint that people before you have come up with. You literally don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just replicate what other successful people have done. And at the end of the day, like I didn't invent any of this. Nothing that I've done is original. I've just learned from other people that are really successful. So keep that in mind because I was in the same place you were.
Yeah, we've done the same thing, and it's really just like you need to find those successful individuals that are in the lane that you want to be in. And I would say we've tried a lot of different things. You don't know what you're going to be in. We didn't know we'd be in multifamily syndication like 4 years down the line. We've tried single family, we've tried multifamily, we've tried Airbnb. Now we're into the syndication space. Like it's just you're trying a lot of things, and then when you find the one that you really love, and that's going to be the most not only most lucrative but the most fun, right? I think there's a lot of things to this, right? Like once you get so far into the game, we're going to be eventually like the gentlemen that are 60, right? And you're just like, dude, you want to play the game, but you want to do it in the way that you want to do it. For half of it for us is we have fun with the marketing and meeting people and networking and like building the community. That's the coolest part, dude. Like this hour that we have with you, dude, this just gets you juiced up for the rest of the week. And you realize there's other people out there that think like you or that are everyone's really truly going through the same thing. Like, how can I make it? And like, you got to figure out what success means to you, right? But for us, this is fun. It's a game, and you want to bring other people up with you and build your team, as he said. And I think Corey gave me some pretty good ideas from maybe a nice ebook and like correlating it along with some players.
There you go.
Building your team, dude.
There you go. You, guy. I like it. I like the sound of it.
Yeah, dude. So I made it just give the secret sauce out there for some listeners. But I do want to touch on this one last thing before we go. I know you're a big podcaster. You guys have the Real Estate Takeoff podcast. Can you talk to us about when your episodes drop, what you guys talk about, and kind of the evolution of the show?
Oh, hell yeah. Thanks for the plug, man. We actually used to be the multifamily takeoff, super focused on multifamily. And then we changed to make it the real estate takeoff. So we can kind of just open it up to hear more niches, more strategies, because I think at the end of the day, like one specific niche isn't always going to be the best thing to be doing every single year. So our podcast, we bring on like, a really renowned experts, you name it. They've been on everyone from the Grant Cardones to the Hunter Thompsons to the, Brandon Turners and things like that. But some of my favorite guests are like, I like also finding the people that have been on the journey only for a couple of years and like recently like had some really good success that they can share with the audience. So we have a big mix. The episodes drop every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern time. And they're usually about 40 to 45 minutes long. Again, it's called the Real Estate Takeoff. You can go to realestatetake.com, check out episodes, things like that. So thanks for the plug, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this has been an awesome conversation, and I know we're winding down the show, but your vibe seems a lot like ours. So guys, if you like our show, I pretty much can guarantee you're going to like Shawn's, and especially with some of the big name guests. We also do the same thing. We try to bring on people that are just getting through their journey, maybe step 2, step 3, because that's what people are doing, right? They're watching the evolution of us and you going through your story. They're like, this is awesome. And sometimes I think when you get perhaps the Grant Cardones or the people that are up the upper echelon, the questions that are asked or the way they answer them are just beyond comprehension at that point. You're like, how do they even get there, right? I like the stepping stones some of the times too, and right, really getting to the nitty gritty. So
the relatability aspect kind of falls off.
Yes.
That's kind of, it's like, you're like, oh, I went out and bought a $50 million apartment complex, and then half the audience is like, all right, I'm shutting this off. Like, I don't know how to do that, right? So
that's why Bigger Pockets got so popular, man. Like, it's because so much of it is relatable. That's what people want to hear.
Yep, absolutely. Shawn, as we wind down the show, this is one of the questions we love to ask at the end. What do you want your legacy to be? And this is a little bit of a thinker here, but you were in air traffic control. You switched completely. You went into a whole new venture. You're killing it in this thing. You're still young. You're in your mid 30s. I hate to say it. Maybe can you hang on to early 30s? We're hanging on to that. But
yeah, I'm trying. I mean, I'm about to be 35, so I'm going to be stretching it.
You look good, dude. You got. We would.
Thanks, man.
We're going early 30s.
We're going early. Okay. So, but the point is like, what gets you up out of bed every day? Like, to do what you do. It's not easy. I'm curious what makes you tick.
What gets me up out of bed and like the ultimate goal is being able to, live the life of my dreams and take care of my family, because like my family, we grew up without a lot of money. My parents still can't retire. They're in their 60s. So here soon, my plan is to pay off my parents' house so they can retire. I feel like that's a huge goal of mine. So I'd like the whole family to be good, basically, is like the ultimate goal. And as far as like the legacy, at my funeral, I just hope everyone's like, dude, that dude was the man. Like, he would always help out, always be a nice guy, always reach out and try to make sure everyone was good. Ultimately, that's what I care about and what people think of me, I guess. But the main goals are just like, me and my family grew up poor. I just don't want everyone to be poor anymore.
Simple enough.
I like it a lot.
We think similarly. I didn't grow up poor, but I have a similar situation where I want to make sure I can take care of my family. Because they're in a similar boat that you are. They want to retire. They're close, but not quite. And it's just, it's a big thing for me. So that's,
I saw, as you were saying that, dude, Shawn, Corey had a little twinkle in his eye, and I'm like, he was like, so I felt like he was just like looking at a future self of it. Mirror image of him, because we've talked about this a lot in the podcast, that he really wants to help retire his family and his dad. And it's just a cool thing, right? Everyone has their own driving force, but a lot of things can be similar, right? Like it's an awesome question to ask entrepreneurs, because there's always a chip on your shoulder or something that's driving you, that's igniting that fire. And it's interesting with, I don't know how to answer it. We get into this topic once in a while, but like, what makes an A player, right? Or like, why are we so driven to do what we do? We grind our 9 to 5s, and then we just continue to grind after and build wealth and try to like create a platform and take to the next level and just give free stuff back to everybody and teach what we've learned. And it's like, what drives you? It's so hard to put like a one simple answer on it, but I do appreciate you sharing that, because now we know your chip, we know your the little flame in you, right? And that's what won't make you stop when it's for someone else. And I don't know, it's something. When you're building up the team and the people around you, it's like, it's not just for me, man. Like, I have to get out of bed for someone else.
The most unique aspect to it, I would say, Rise, that there's not one thing. I've met people who come from nothing, who have made their life everything, right? And then, I try to relate to that person. I'm like, damn, do I even have that fire that you have? And it turns out I might. It's just different, right? And like, I know some people that grew up extremely wealthy and they have this chip that they can't let their family down, because they were given it all, and they're so appreciative, and they don't want to let anyone else down, so they build it even bigger. So there's always someone that has, this. If you're an entrepreneur and you're successful, and there's something, and you just got to figure out what that thing is, and then dive all the way into that. And I've listened to a bunch of podcasts, and some of the reasons is because people are deeply insecure, and they were made literally bullied as a kid, and it doesn't even have to be a lot. It's just something that stuck with them, and they're like, I just want to make sure that
everyone wrong.
That doesn't happen to my kids, or so it's I love the legacy, the what fires you up conversation, because it's really like why we're all sitting here at the end of our days having a conversation when we could be watching Netflix. It's like we'd rather be doing this, or else we would be watching Netflix.
Yeah,
so,
100%, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better.
Cool. Well, Shawn, this has been amazing, man. It's really good to get to know you, your story. We're in similar parts of our lives, similar journeys. We're in the syndication space as you are as well. If people want to learn more about you, they want to network, maybe one day you're going to be that mentor that you were looking for. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
2 ways. One, follow me on Instagram. I'm trying to put stuff out there every day. I put a lot about my journey and things I'm up to. That's just Shawn_Dimartile, at Shawn_Dimartile. I won't even spell it. You guys will be able to see it on the website description. But the other way is investorshawn.com, SHAWN.com, where you can also get the link to my Instagram, my ebook if you're interested in that, and my blog, all sorts of stuff.
Awesome. We'll also drop everything in the show notes. But Shawn, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, man. I think all three of us here are cut from the same cloth, and it was just really cool to chat with another guy who's in a similar boat to us. And we haven't talked to someone specifically that started the podcast and that had just escaped the W-2 job. And it's just a really, really synonymous conversation. And you're a great guy. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you for your kind words. I had a great time. You guys have a good podcast, man. Like the way you guys flow with the podcast, it's nice.
Thank you, dude. That means a lot.
Keeping that in.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.